been tossed in this world to roll. No hope had I for tomorrow. I started to make heaven my home. Sometimes I'm tossed and driven, Lord. Sometimes I don't know where to roll. But I heard of a city called heaven. So I started to make heaven. I started to make heaven. I started to make heaven my home. I invite you to bow your heads with a word of prayer for me, with me. This morning, our most gracious and heavenly Father, we come to you with bowed heads and humble hearts. First, with a moment of gratitude to say thank you. Lord, we thank you for not only the life, but those of us who are engaged in the living. We thank you for a reasonable amount of health and strength, for waking up in your grace. We thank you because this is a day that was not promised to us. We did not have to see it, but you, in your mercy and your kindness, allowed us to reach this day. Lord, we recognize and we realize just how awesome you are. But even engaged with all the trouble and triumph in this world, you remain the same. Lord, I ask that you hide me behind your word. I ask that you use me as an instrument. I ask that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. O God, my strength, my Redeemer. In the name of Jesus, we ask it all. Amen.
Thank you for that beautiful prayer.
You're welcome. I want to start with the moment of gratitude. What Dean was talking about, the theater offensive being a tenant in this place, I think, there's no way to really highlight the effect of us being able to be, one, in a church, an organization like ours. Our mission is to present queer and trans theater, and it's very few organizations that will allow you to be housed in their building. And so this organization, the church is very mission driven and reminds us that we are mission aligned, which again, that kind of affirmation and that sense of belonging is rare. And so one of the things that I wanted to do to show my gratitude, and they make it affordable, so not only do they have us here, but they make it affordable, was to say, what can I do to kind of say thank you in a different way? So I told Dean if there was ever an opportunity for me to come and speak, that I would be glad to do it. We had prepared this opportunity a couple of months ago, but the weather had other plans. So we are here now, and I'm actually kind of grateful because I don't know what I was going to say a couple of months ago. If it's as relevant as here, and the kind of context in which I want to speak now. I would like to further introduce myself. I won't talk about the theater offensive a lot because, as Dean said, the youth usually come and perform. This is more personal thanks and gratitude and kind of getting to know you and you getting to know Harold. I am from Dallas, Texas. I've been in Boston less than 2 years. It'll be 2 years on May 31st. So I'm a Southern boy, a proud kind of Southerner. And I think that's important if you can already tell from how I talk, the way I be, what I say, the songs that I sing. But the Southern context is very important to my kind of being. I was raised in a Black Baptist Southern tradition. I've learned to accept that, to hold on to it, and to kind of use it no matter where I go. I actually identify as a sex-positive, saved Southern sissy, and that was a gift that my grandmother gave to me. I'll say it again, sex-positive, saved Southern sissy, and it's taken about 35 years to understand that those kind of identities don't cancel themselves out, rather than one kind of uplifts the other. A gift my grandmother gave to me in life and also in death. Like I mentioned before, this sermon was supposed to be delivered around Dr. King's birthday. So, there's a way in which we wanted to approach that. That has changed because we're no longer observing the birth of Dr. King. And really, we're not even talking about the death of Dr. King that happened on April 4th, but we can use it when we look at kind of a timeline, a span of blackness, right? So we'll use King as a reference, but since the dates have changed, I want you to know some of the context is the same, but the source material may be a little different. So if you read something and you're like, that's not what I read, we're just going to ask for some grace for this moment. We'll ask for a lot of grace. I'm battling a cold, but it was important not to cancel it again, so I'm going to fight through it if you'll fight with me, and I think we can get somewhere. The other thing I think is important to understand in terms of context, in terms of how I've come to be, who I am, and how I've come to accept myself in this queer way of being, is that most of the storytelling that I was accustomed to growing up followed a kind of linear and kind of literal structure that was fun to engage with, but it wasn't something that I could produce. And I hated myself, not being able to go from like point A to point B all the time, right? I was like, I gotta go around, I gotta go through. I'm a Virgo, on top of being queer, right? So the reason you have the condensed version of a larger title of a sermon is that, Virgos can't make up their minds sometimes. So this is an introduction to a lot of larger concepts. So even if you find that it's hard to follow, just understand you're engaging with queerness. You're engaging with the queer literal and the queer linear. So hopefully in the question and answer part, there'll be some time to kind of clarify some things. This is an introduction to some concepts and some ideas that seek to ask more questions than it will answer. So, you might have to invite me back for part 2, Dean. On the other parts, buy the book whenever it comes out. If a Virgo can finish a book, then you can buy the book, all right, whenever it comes out. More than a sermon, this is a cultural reflection, right? So there'll be times where I'll invite you to think and think again, and even breathe, right? Again, there's a means to an end that may be different than what we're used to. That is intentional, from the Southern sissy. A scripture reader, Matthew 13:1-9. The same day Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. Such crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat there, while the whole crowd stood on the beach, and he told them many things in parables, saying, Listen, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell on the path, and the birds came and they ate them up. Other seeds fell on rocky ground where they did not have much soil, and they sprung up quickly, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Let anyone with ears hear. Those of us, if you follow Christianity, you may know this as the parable of the sower. A story that in the Christian church, especially the Black Christian church of the South, is told time and time and time again about planting and sowing, and usually the sowers are referred to anyone who believes and will engage with the gospel. There's another version of the parable of the sower that I would like to bring into this sermon today. I've come to believe that if I truly want clarity, I should engage in a Black feminist understanding of things. A Black feminist analysis is the most intersectional analysis that we have. It considers race, it considers class, it considers gender and sexuality, and a whole host of other things. as it speaks, before it speaks, while it's speaking, and as it's revising what it has to say. Parable of the Sower is also a science fiction novel by Black American feminist writer Octavia E. Butler. Although published in 1993, Mama Butler sets the story in the 2020s. Black feminists not only understand where we have been, they know where we are going. In the Parable of the Sower, Mama Butler says, all successful life is adaptable, opportunistic, tenacious, interconnected, and falcon. Understand this, use it, shape God. Use it, shape God. Mama Butler also informs us that God is change. She tells us in parable also, all that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only constant is change. God is change. The same Butler that tells us God is change also states, in order to have a successful life, we, and you can read that because she's writing, the Black folks have to use our adaptability, the quality of being able to adapt to new conditions, our optimistic, the exploitation of chances offered by immediate circumstances, our tenaciousness, the ability to hold fast and to keep a firm hold, our interconnectedness, the state of being connected one to the other, and our our falconry. Our ability to produce an abundance of offspring or new growth, and that is our fertility. Using all of this, we can shape God and shape change. Butler gives us permission and agency to shape God, and I think it's important that we just take a moment to think how revolutionary that theory is, especially coming out of the Black church, for a colonized Black mind to say, you can shape God, you can shape change, when all that we've been taught is to kind of reverence God and receive, but to be active participants in shaping the change of our lives through God is revolutionary in thought. Take a moment, breathe, think about it. Think again. Considering all of this, this text has been entitled, From Nigger to Colored, to Negro to Black, to Afro, then African American, and right back to nigger, or how we made blackness so irresistible they tried to take it away from us. A cultural reflection on living the dream. First off, let's be intentional with our thinking. We know that race was constructed in order to give European colonizers collective social, economic, and political power. Of this we, or at least I am sure, so this race-based sermon and the discussion of blackness is not to erase my African ancestry, but rather to highlight what we've done with your creation. I actually have to stop and thank, because I think Afro Blue is a great setup to talk about the connection between African people and their American existence. The first part of this title comes from the hip-hop artist Talib Kweli, For Women song, where he writes his own version of Nina Simone's For Women song. Nina writes about four, F-O-U-R, Black women describing their similar but varied experience in America through the ages, and Kweli writes two, F-O-R, Black women, a tribute to them for their similar but varied experience in America through the ages. In the first verse, Kweli says, I got off the 2 train in Brooklyn on the way to a session. Said, let me help this woman up the stairs before I get to stepping. We got into a conversation. She said she's 107. Just her presence was a blessing and her essence was a lesson. She's had a head wrap and long dreads that peek out the back, like antennas to help her get a sense of where she was at. Imagine that. Living a century, the strength of her memories felt like an angel had been sent to me. She lived from nigger to colored to Negro to Black to Afro, then African American, and right back to nigger. You figure she'd be bitter with the twilight, but she all right because she done seen the circle of life. Mind blowing. 107-year-old Black woman existence in America that has an oppressive beginning, an oppressive middle, And here she is toward the oppressive end, but somehow not only has she survived this, but there's a presence of joy in her being. I know this black woman. She is very familiar to me. She is the archetype of the black Southern elders from back home, including Velma Body, my grandmother, who lived to be 86 years old. On a Sunday morning in the South, very similar to this one, they would call up a call and response song, How I Got Over. In that song, they would say, my soul looks back and wonder how I got over. Think about it, 107 years of black woman existence in America, the trials, the tribulations, the joys and the sorrow, and even the cultural reflection. How did I make it over? Think. Breathe. And think again. This sermon seeks to respond to my grandmother's inquiry. I'll start with what I know. Any identity forced upon us can either be rejected, internalized, reshaped, and or reclaimed. We were stolen from Africa, brought to this country as Africans. Somehow we became niggers. In turn, niggers returned niggers to the sender, made niggas metaphysical, and connected it to culture. Further proof, you cannot outdo black people. Our survival in this country has been connected to what I call identity reclamation and fugitive blackness. Identity reclamation is a theoretical exploration that I've been working on that examines the ways in which oppressed people reclaim their right and agency to shape their identity using cultural production. I don't have to convince you of the many, many ways and the many, many cultural contributions of black folks throughout the ages. Think about your favorite song, the food you love the most, what fashion inspires you, what body archetype you desire, all the different ways in which black people have created some kind of cultural being throughout the ages, facing some of the most oppressive moments. Identity reclamation looks at that and says there's something to learn about that. Something about that is connected to our survival. And if we regain our right to have control of that, to really own that and live with it, it will definitely still be connected to our collective and our individual liberation. Our racialized identity, from niggas to niggas, and I'll stop, and I know it's controversial, right? To say those words. They're uncomfortable to hear sometimes, niggas and nigga, right? And I think, it's done largely on purpose to make us comfortably uncomfortable or uncomfortably comfortable and things like that, and to really kind of push us into examine, why do I feel the way that I do when I hear those things? And I would say all of it is relevant, right? Niggas, N-I-G-G-E-R-S, was forced upon us. We came here as Africans. Thought we would even exist among against our will as Africans, but we were called niggas. When we get to niggas, N-I-G-G-A-S, that's something we reclaimed, we reshaped, we owned it, and gave it back. So I don't want you to think that I don't recognize how controversial these terms are. I appreciate that you allowed me to say it in this kind of pulpit, and even explore it with you collectively. So back, our racialized identities, from niggas to niggas, has been largely named and shaped by cultural shifts in mainstream politics, to which we have had a cultural resistance. It is in that transitional blackness, those moments of great change, that we shape God, that we shape change. From niggas to colored had to do with some kind of cultural shift in mainstream politics in America. From colored to black had to do with some kind of mainstream shift in the politics of America. From colored actually to Negro. Then from Negro to black, what is the cultural shift in mainstream politics that caused that kind of racial identity shift? from black to afros, from afro to African American, and what we're going to deal with this time, how we got right back to being niggas. What is the mainstream kind of cultural shift that's happening now? I ask you to reflect on that. Think about it. Breathe. Think again. Identity reclamation is as much of an individual act as it is a collective one. You understand that blackness is an experience that includes the arts, the resistance, and even the conformity. This is why someone like me can fully accept a generation of black folks that would reclaim a word like nigga, fully understanding the context in which it has been put upon us. I understand that there is also a power within reclamation and reshaping. For many of us, we thought that our right to citizenship might be had to do with how closely aligned we could come to whiteness. So in the black community, we developed very harmful politics of respectability. What I love about new niggas is that they push against any respectability politic that does not serve us. I told you I identified as a sex positive, save Southern sissy, pushing against everything that I have come to internalize about that, and using everything that I have within me to liberate myself towards shaping this identity anew. The second part of our survival deals with the constant state of fugitivity that we find ourselves in. For all of us, there's a certain hiding place we seek to escape to. It is a metaphysical state of being that we access using the erotic, sex and pleasure, can we be honest in here? The narcotic, drugs and other substances that can create a mood change, the cultural, art, food, languages, and or the spiritual, religion and the likes. This place of fugitivity separates us from the cares of this world. If I'm to understand black survival, that means I understand that anything that African descendants, our cultural self, take to a metaphysical place is dangerous and can't be taken away and controlled by whiteness. Looking back on our journey, I wonder, what is our racial identity in the metaphysical? What is nigga spoken but written N-I-G-G-E-R in the metaphysical? What is colored in a metaphysical space? Living life as a Negro but running towards some fugitive metaphysical space, what was that like? Being black in the metaphysical. Afro-American running and escaping the cares of this world to the metaphysical. African-American running and escaping some of those same but very different cares because of cultural mainstream political shifts in the metaphysical. And now, this new form of nigga, spoken and written N-I-G-G-A, what is it in the metaphysical space? What came out of these hidings, this fugitive state of blackness? Think about it. Reflect. Breathe. Think again. I want to invite us to take a moment and do a collective activity.